Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to go over some wide receivers that I cannot stop drafting in mock drafts so far this season. Now, I've been doing a ton of mock drafts every single chance that I get, and these guys I just can't help myself but keep picking. Devonta Adams is number 1. He's going as wide receiver number 7 in PPR right now. Finished as wide receiver number 3 last season with an average of 19.7 PPR fantasy points per game. He commanded the second most targets in the league in 2022, just behind Justin Jefferson, and led the league in touchdowns with 14. Now, we all know the most inconsistent fantasy football metric is touchdowns, but I don't think Adams needs 14 touchdowns to be a top 5 wide receiver in the league this year. Now, last season with Derek Carr, Adams had the most 20-plus yard receptions and the most average yards per reception ever in his entire career. But I do expect things to change with Jimmy G at QB here, which will benefit PPR players and, hopefully just lead to more overall receptions for Adams. Now, the Raiders benefited a lot last season from having Josh Jacobs be the league's leading rusher. So if he does hold out this year, I don't know what the situation is looking like with Jacobs. If he holds out, even if he doesn't hold out, I would be looking for things to slow down a bit. And if the rushing attack does struggle at all, Adams should be a great beneficiary right here. Next up on the list, Calvin Ridley, going as wide receiver number 19 in PPR. Now, I honestly thought that the hype for Ridley wouldn't be nearly as high as it is, considering that he's been out of the league for over a year now. Boy, was I wrong. This guy is going, early 3rd round at sometimes in mock drafts, late 3rd round to early 4th, no later than early 4th round. So if you can snag this guy in the early 4th round, I would be very happy. He finished his last full season in 2020 with the same amount of yards as Devonta Adams, but 25 less receptions. During that year, he had Matt Ryan as his quarterback, who was 35 years old at the time. Now he's going into an explosive offense with a 3rd-year quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who is gaining more and more confidence every time he steps on the field. Not to mention, they have the easiest wide receiver strength of schedule this upcoming season. I want absolutely everything to do with this Jaguars offense this year. The only question marks are, of course, how will he perform after missing so much time? But I'm willing to take the risk on Ridley here because all the reports are hinting that he hasn't missed a beat. Next up, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown going as wide receiver number 9 in PPR. Now, the price is much steeper than in previous seasons, but I would still rather have Amon-Ra over players such as Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle just for the consistency factor that he provides. Now, we know what we're going to get from Jared Goff. He's not going to be anything amazing, but he will get the job done, and this team is going to score a lot of points. Now, he received more than 2 times the amount of targets as Khalif Raymond, who was the number 2 targeted player on this Lions team last year. I would expect that huge percentage of targets to keep going to Amon-Ra this season, especially with Jameson Williams being out for the first couple of games. So far in his 2 years in the league, he's increased his fantasy points from 13.4 per game in 2021 to 16.7 per game in 2022. I think we're going to see another massive leap for Amon-Ra this year, closer to that 18 to 20 fantasy points per game mark if we're lucky. Next up, we have Devonta Smith going as wide receiver number 12 in PPR this year. Now, he took a major step up last season by going from 10.9 PPR fantasy points per game to 15 points per game. It was great to see, personally, Jalen Hurts spreading the ball so evenly around this offense. All the targets were not getting clustered to A.J. Brown, who is the number 1 on this team, and Smith still ate on the other side of the field. Now, Smith was clearly much more effective when Dallas Goedert was hurt during the latter portion of the year. So now that he's back and healthy, I would just lower your expectations a bit if you think he's going to automatically return to his late season form. Now, the Eagles last season had the most rushing attempts in the entire league, and Smith and Brown were still extremely effective. That's why I want a lot to do with this offense. We saw last year that when games were close even, Devonta Smith was getting the ball even more than A.J. Brown, so that should give you even more confidence picking this receiver. Next guy up, Chris Olave, going as wide receiver number 14 in PPR. Now, Chris Olave eclipsed 1,000 yards in his rookie season, which is great to see, and his quarterback situation, if we remember, was an absolute mess, so it can only get better this year. At least we hope. Now, despite the Saints being severely mediocre when it came to the passing game and just scoring 19.4 points per game overall, Olave still led the team in targets with 119, and the next highest person was Alvin Kamara, which should definitely tell you something. This receiving core was not good other than Chris Olave last year. Now, I am a bit skeptical about how Derek Carr is going to perform here, but if his performance with Devonta Adams can even slightly carry over, I do like Chris Olave's chances at succeeding in this upcoming season. Now, Michael Thomas will be back and healthy this year, knock on wood, so some targets are definitely going to go his way, but I still have faith for Olave, and you absolutely love this guy in Dynasty Leagues. Trust me, if you can get him in Dynasty Leagues, you need to keep him because he's going to be a real winner in the future. Next up, we have Christian Watson going as wide receiver number 23 in PPR. Look, nobody really knows what you're going to get out of Jordan Love this upcoming season, but one thing is for sure, it's that Christian Watson is the clear #1 wide receiver on this team right now. The concern for me and many others last year was his target share, and he ended up scoring a touchdown on over 25% of his total targets from weeks 10 to 13, which is absolutely not sustainable. And his average targets over the course of last season was less than 6 per game. So in order for him to be effective consistently, those targets are going to need to go up around the double-digit mark. But we have seen just from the glimpse that we got last season of him that he is more than capable of making these big plays happen time and time again if he gets the opportunities. Jerry Jeudy is up next. He is currently going as wide receiver number 24 in PPR leagues. First off, Tim Patrick is feared to have a torn Achilles, which would be a season-ending injury, leaving the main 2 wide receivers as Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton the same as last season. Now, I'm not even concerned a little bit about Sutton stealing any targets away from Jeudy whatsoever, because we saw exactly how that went last season. Even when Jerry Jeudy was injured and Sutton was set up for extreme success, he still let everybody down that played him, and I don't expect that to change this season. Now, the bottom line last season is that Russell Wilson was horrific, but Jerry Jeudy still had the best season of his short career, averaging 13.6 fantasy points per game while commanding 100 targets throughout the course of the season. When Jeudy is healthy, he is an electric player and is a very consistent option for your fantasy team. For example, week 7, 16.6, week 8, 18.3, week 14, 33.3, week 15, 14.6, week 16, 17.7, and week 18, 24.3. Now, as you can tell by these stats, he closed out the season very strong, and if Russell Wilson even gets 5% better than last season this year, then so should Jerry Jeudy. Next up on the list, Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. McLaurin is going as wide receiver number 20 in PPR, and Dotson is going as wide receiver number 38. Now, it's very clear by these rankings that Dotson is the better value play, especially in best ball leagues. But I still do find Terry McLaurin very intriguing in casual redraft leagues because he does put up consistent numbers year after year after year. Now, Sam Howell should be one of, if not the best quarterback that either of these guys have played with during their time in the NFL, which should translate to a bit more consistency for both of them. Now, Terry isn't going to blow you away with massive games too often, but seeing as he drops around 20 points about 2 to 3 times per year since 2020, he'll give you some big games here and there, but like I said, it's the consistency that we love about Terry. Those weeks where he gets 15 to 18 points are going to come very often for him. Now, Dotson, on the other hand, offers endless possibilities because he is so young and we haven't seen him play enough. Now, during a 3-game stretch last season from weeks 13 to 16, Dotson put up 16.4, 20.5, and 19.6 PPR fantasy points in each of those contests, showing that he is very capable of being a fantasy football asset in his second season. Now, this is all dependent on your risk tolerance on who you're going to draft out of these two, but I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. Next up, Marquise Brown going as wide receiver number 34 in PPR. Listen, this Cardinals team was terrible last season, and they are projected to be horrible once again. Las Vegas is projecting them to sit right around 4 to 5 wins the entire season, and Kyler isn't going to be healthy for the start of the season, which is a little bit concerning. The good news for Hollywood Brown is that he should still receive the majority of the targets on this offense, especially because D-Hop is gone now and he is the clear #1 wide receiver here. Now, in the beginning of last season, he averaged 23.7 PPR fantasy points through the first 5 weeks of the season, although Kyler Murray was the quarterback at the time and he was healthy. He did struggle during the later portion of the season, but I really think that was due to him coming back a little bit prematurely from his foot injury and really never recovering. You know how injuries can linger throughout the entirety of a season if somebody comes back too soon. I think that's exactly what happened there. Now, other than Hollywood Brown, the only other player on this entire team that I would touch with a 10-foot pole in your drafts is James Conner, but we're going to talk about that in another video. Next player up, Elijah Moore. I am really excited about Elijah Moore this season, and I think he could have a massive breakout year. He's going as wide receiver number 54 in PPR. Now, this guy was an absolute stud on the New York Jets in 2021. And then in 2022, the Jets just didn't want to use him at all. I think there was some attitude problems there. And, you know, there was some differences, let's just say. But in 2021, he averaged 12.6 points per game while scoring over 20 points in 3 out of his last 5 games before getting hurt in week 13, which would ultimately end his season. Now, overall, he's in a much better spot on the Browns this year with Deshaun Watson as his QB, and the Browns offense actually giving him a chance to hopefully shine here. Reports have been coming out all training camps saying that Moore has been the most targeted player on the team, and the chemistry with Watson is looking phenomenal. Now, Dynasty Leagues especially, I would be targeting Moore because you want this guy for the foreseeable future. And although Amari Cooper is still the clear #1 option on this team, don't be surprised if Elijah Moore breaks out in what I'm counting to be his actual second season in the league here. Next up here, George Pickens going as wide receiver number 35. Listen, I am willing to take the risk on George Pickens having the year 2 breakout simply because the offense looked completely busted last season. Deontay Johnson had the most targets in the league without scoring a single touchdown. Pickens was struggling all year to get consistent targets, but even with everything seeming to go wrong, he still put up solid weeks here and there around that 15 PPR points per game mark. It just wasn't consistent enough. Hopefully this season he finds that consistency and Pickens can start the breakout because we know he is more than capable of scoring when he has the opportunities. Next up, Michael Thomas, currently going as wide receiver number 42, and that's why I'm willing to take the risk on MT here. When he's healthy, he is still an amazing player, and we caught a glimpse of that in the first 2 weeks of last season when he scored 22.7 and 18.5 PPR fantasy points before, of course, getting hurt for the rest of the season. Now, he's only played in 10 games in the last 3 years, so this might be really his final shot here. Does he have something to prove? I personally think he does. I think he's going to play well. He has a lot of incentives in his new contract. I'm going to put that on screen for you guys right now to take a look at. He can earn a possible $2.5 million extra here if he plays well enough. Now, you tell me if that would give you a little extra motivation to play well, because it certainly would for me. Anyways, if you guys are new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and dropping a like on this video. I will catch you in the next one. Good luck in your fantasy football leagues this year, and hopefully you are drafting some of these guys on that team.